I'm Dan Firth. I'm with the Coupa Forum Board, and my only mission is to introduce Paul Needham. He's your speaker today on Verbal Judo.
That's right.
He's a retired sheriff, so I'm sure he has lots and lots of anecdotes about how to talk to people in various different situations.
My name is Paul Needham, and I'll tell you about myself here shortly. It's a very short story. We got cops and firemen in here, or basically firefighters or code enforcement. How many firefighters are in here? Just a few. Okay. I've just got a story about firemen, cops, and no. It's. I'm hoping it's okay to tell, but at any rate, back in the 70s, I was a young strapping patrolman up in the city of Brisbane, and for those of you who remember Brisbane way back then, I mean it was very country western, a lot of bar fights, pretty interesting little town. And I was driving around about bar closing time, and I saw a guy at a gas station doorway, and it looked like he was kind of working on the doorknob. It looked like, when I drove by, that this guy trying to break in there. And so, you know, I did what anybody would do. You know, I put the spotlight on him. And we had these big aircraft landing spotlights on the patrol car. And when I hit him with the aircraft landing light, when it lit him up, what I found out he was doing is he was urinating in the doorway. And when I hit him with the light, I really scared him, and he just zipped up. See, guys in here understand that. You know, women in here right away are going, what do you mean? Okay. But yeah, he zipped up over the very end of his penis. And so, I knew something was really, really wrong, because it just seemed like as soon as I hit him with a light, he dropped down. And for those of you who are fishermen, you know how a fish, when you land him, you know, he was just writhing on the ground in agony. And I had no idea really what was going on with him. But I got out of the car and I became, you know, an instant expert on, you know, penises trapped in zippers. And so I got on the radio and I did what anybody else would do. You call the fire department. and because I said, I have no training for this. So, you know, I got on the radio sent fire, and it was a small town, and hell, we hung out at the fire department most of the time. So this fire captain and another guy, shall remain nameless, you know, show up in the rig, and now you got to remember, this is late at night, and we were in proximity to a medium-sized apartment complex, and so they rolled up, and they rolled up quiet. You know, they just had the little thing going, and no siren. And when Pete got out, you know, I said, hey, you're not going to believe this, man. And I tell him quietly that, you know, this guy's zipped his penis up in his pants. Well, he starts laughing hysterically, and he tells the other guy, hey, you won't believe this. Come here, look at this. And so I'm going, oh man, this is going to get ugly. And so he comes over there. They're kind of laughing, but kind of trying to be professional. And it took only a couple of minutes before the three of us realized, you know what? This is ugly. I mean, this is we got to get this guy some help. And so I said, Pete, we got to do something. He says, all right, well, get the baby kit. So they get the baby kit out of the fire rig because they got some needle-nose pliers in there. And I mean, I don't know how to do anything with this, and as it turned out, neither did they. And and so there are, you know, still late at night, right? And so they get the needle nose pliers out, and Pete puts the needle nose pliers on the tab of the zipper, and it was kind of one of those, brace yourself, buddy, and you know, gives it a tug, because the idea was to tug it back over the trapped part of his penis. And he screamed as loud as I've ever heard any man scream in my life since before, and lights were coming on in the apartment building, and he didn't, you know, I mean, it didn't go over, you know, he was still trapped. So at any rate, we decided, man, we got to get an ambulance. We get an ambulance. We ship him off to Kaiser, South City. And I was curious, so I went over there, and that's when I learned something. Now, see, most of the women in here already understand this. But, I mean, I didn't know. You know, they're bring him in there, and I mean, by now, I mean, it's just kind of bloody, and it's not looking good. And the nurse looked at us like we were morons, and got a pair of scissors and cut out the bottom of the pant, and you know where the zipper attaches, he just the zipper just pulled apart. And so, I mean, that's my fireman police story. And I got a million more, but that's true. What we're going to yak about is something called verbal judo. It's also called tactical communication. And I like this picture only because it tends to at least start to demonstrate, you know, who's better prepared in this ring to you know, get involved in a fight. The guy with the oven mitts on, or, you know, the guy with the boxing gloves on. And I guess what we're going to yak about today is how to be prepared for some things that happen when we're talking to and conversing with other people. Because most of you already know what I'm going to tell you. I promise you, most of you already know this. But you may not have heard it put together in the same way. And I think that's its value, is when we put it together all in one cohesive block. I think that's what makes it valuable. This is me. That's my email address. If you want to send me hate mail, go ahead. I retired in '99 from the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Office, and I was in law enforcement for 25 years, and I was basically working where the rubber met the road. You know, I was either a detective or on patrol. I never had any desire to promote. I liked that level. I like working with the public, and I like showing up for work and not really know what's going to happen. So that was what I did until I got out in '99. After that, I started getting involved in law enforcement training, and I've been teaching with Las Positas Chabot for about 5 years now, and primarily at the Police Academy over at the Alameda County Sheriff's Office facility in Dublin. And I'm also an investigator with the insurance industry, do a little bit of workman comp videotape stuff, which is really cool, but that's another thing. What we're going to talk about is a little bit about the history of where verbal judo or this tactical communication stuff started. And we'll talk a little bit about communication itself. And I want to apologize, but I got to walk around. I'm not one of the people that stand behind a podium. It drives me nutty. So bear with me. We're going to talk about the different types of people we might run into from time to time and how different folks respond to different methods of communicating. And we're going to talk about, you know, how to persuade difficult people a little bit, because that's the lion's share of what this is about persuading difficult people. And we're going to talk about, you know, how a lot of us do it, old school, and then a more enlightened approach that I call the five-step, well, that is known as the five-step Hardstyle. We're also going to talk about when words fail, because I think it's helpful to also remind you that you can't talk people out of doing crazy stuff. I mean, I guarantee you, I do know when words fail. And so we need to at least remind you of when it's probably a good idea to, you know, get out, leave, because words are not working. And then we'll review a little bit, and we'll call it a day. And you know, what I prefer, if you don't mind, is I prefer a really relaxed atmosphere. If you want to get up and go. You know, if you want to, you know, ask questions, if something occurs to you while we're talking, raise your hand. I'm easy that way. I prefer it that way. Verbal Judo is a trademarked program, and it was pioneered by George Thompson, and that's a picture of him. And the reason why I want to tell you that is because I got my training from George Thompson. And I want you to know that I signed a non-competition agreement at the time I got that training, which was over a decade ago. But I'm not getting paid to do this. And I feel strongly about letting you know that, because from an ethical standpoint, I'm not going to compete with this guy. I don't want to compete with him. I'm doing this as a favor. So understand that I'm not charging for this. Mr. Thompson was a teacher, and he was a college professor, and I believe it was in the state of Kansas. Make a long story short, he was getting a little bit bored with the whole college professor scene. And he decided he would liven things up a bit, and he got involved, I believe it was with Kansas City PD, but don't hold me to that. But it was a pretty major size police department. And I believe he was a reserve with them. I don't think he went full time. But the fact of the matter is, he really kind of liked getting involved with cops. And he was able to, he taught English in college. And so he's very familiar with words and writing and persuading people. And he was able to take a little bit of that and use it to advantage when he was working the street as a cop. And he has a martial arts background, and so he's big on, for those of you who are even peripherally involved in martial arts, you'll understand that martial arts is about repetition. Again and again and again and again. You know, wax on, wax off, right? And what we find about this method I'm going to tell you about, it's a lot of repetition. The more you use it, the easier it's going to become, and you'll just use it with your kids, you'll use it with everybody. So at any rate, one of the things that George talked about was that when he got involved in law enforcement, he saw that there were people, there were cops that were just great cops, that could persuade people to do anything. And what he basically classified them as, hey, they had the gift of gab. They were great BSers, you know. They could talk to somebody and they would develop a friendship and they would motivate people to do something based just on their power to persuade. And so again, there's a component of acting that he talks about that I will, you know, run by you here. That there's, sometimes in persuading people, we got to put the right face on for the right person at the right time. And because I'll tell you, the best cops are actors. And certainly he found that out. Today, in law enforcement circles, verbal judo, or we call it tactical communication because we bought it from him, we teach this in police academies up and down the state. It's mandatory training. And because again, in terms of conflict resolution, you got to admit, you know, cops are pretty often, they're dealing with difficult people in circumstances that we don't want to just go from, you know, do it to putting hands on people. We try to persuade them short of actually having to force people to do things. And so with that brief little introduction, I'll tell you a little bit about this communication process that I think you know about, but maybe you don't know bits and pieces of. Maybe. We'll see. The way we communicate is far less about what we say. It's a lot about the way we say it, right? I mean, I can come up with a whole lot of different sentences, but the one that I like is I never said I stole the money. You know, depending upon the way I say that, I can change the complete message. I never said I stole the money. I never said I stole the money. You know, I never said I stole the money. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm changing the meaning of the sentence with just a, and the words haven't changed. So this yahoo here that I got off of Google, I don't know what his message is, but what he's communicating to me is that he's a little bent. You know, I mean, he's having a good time, but he does not. There's a communication process going on there, and we're not even hearing any words. But it looks like maybe he's fooling around. You know, he doesn't appear to be dangerous to me. He looks like he's just kind of ogling for the camera. I mean, there's a little bit of a message there that we're getting just from looking at him. As it turns out, in the communication message that we do with folks, as it turns out, the words we choose tend to be the least valuable part of the communication message. And that will become interesting in a few minutes because we need to know that for a couple of reasons. But it turns out that body language and voice are some pretty interesting persuasive parts of that message. I was at a party and This is years ago, and we were talking about some R&B artists, in the 60s and stuff. And this guy was joining the conversation, and one of the things he said is, "Oh, yeah, I just love Aretha Franklin." And we're thinking, we started laughing at the guy. But it's Aretha, man. It's not urethra. And I guess I love that as an example because he immediately lost credibility with this. Oh yeah, you're into the R&B scene, man. And so although words are a very small part of the message overall, we can lose great credibility with our audience if we use words incorrectly. It's kind of like, remember that old show with Archie Bunker? What was the name of that show? All in the Family. And so I look across the sea and hear people going, "Nah, I don't know that show." So I'm dating myself. But at any rate, every once in a while he would mispronounce words, and he came off as a moron. And before the day's over, I will come off as a moron too. So it's just the way we are.
Tickets.
Dude.
Tickets.
Like they, dude.
Dude.
You get it. Dude. Dude. One word, dude. And but yet he was giving all sorts of different messages with that one word, was he not? And some of them were, "Hey, I'm in pain." Some of them were, "Hey, he wanted the guy's attention." There were a lot of different things, excitement. One of the things we can see is that if you look at that commercial and what he was communicating with that single word, he was manipulating a lot of his meaning, a lot of the meaning of his message with what? Voice tone. Whether we yell something or whether we are soft about it, whether we talk real quick or whether we're talking slow. The pitch, the pace, the volume, all that stuff tells us a lot about what people are saying. Any of you that have ever had an argument with your significant other, and the volume started to increase with the other half, did you notice that the message was starting to change a bit? Typically loud volume, increases in volume tend to reflect, some sort of disappointment or anger. At any rate, pretty big piece of the message block. Turns out that body language is by far the biggest component. And so it's how we say things, how we're standing, the expression on our face. It's this total package, far less than just words. If you look at me, what if I was in, shorts and a t-shirt? I showed up to talk to you in shorts and a t-shirt. That's part of body language. It's appearance, and we get a sense of people through that. I like the pictures of these two cops because I think appearance is part of body language. It tends to set the stage for credibility. It tends to even set the stage for what in law enforcement? Vulnerability. Because, it's a jungle out there and people are sizing you up. And if you look vulnerable, maybe you will become a victim yourself. And I don't know. I don't know anything about either one of these guys except that this gentleman looks a little bit more fit than this gentleman. And so, I don't know. I'm not trying to cast stones. I'm just saying, I don't know. I might take him more seriously. Don't know. Turns out the entire communication package kind of looks like that. And I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. You know this stuff for the most part. So how do we take that and find it a tool that we can use to our advantage? And if you look at the ways we communicate, especially in business, it boils down to three things. We're either using emails, or we're on the telephone, or it's face-to-face. And even now it's starting to occur to you, you know what? There may be some value in all those methods, but we want to be careful about how we employ them. Emails, they're great, you know. I mean, they are you know, new age kind of stuff. It's kind of cool. I remember when I first started playing around with emails, I loved it. And now we just take it for granted. But let me ask you this. Anybody in here, in the office, in the workplace, ever gotten an email from a manager perhaps saying, you know, we're going to do this from now on? Some kind of an email from somebody, whether it's a boss, and it pissed you off. And it upset you. And, you know, only to then find out a little bit down the road when you actually talked to the person that sent it that, wait a second, they didn't mean it that way. This is, you know, that there was a misunderstanding. And what I find a flaw in with emails is that, especially if you're trying to joke around with somebody, you can ruffle some people's feathers with emails. Unintentionally, you know, in fact, they tell us now something that's really a pretty good thing to try and do with emails is to do what? Set it aside. Well, yeah, we'd set it aside for sure before we respond to it. But another thing they're starting to say is, hey, you know what? Use exclamation marks, use those little smiley faces, use those emoters. Because they tend to further explain the message you're trying to send. It's a form of body language in emails, you know. A little devil face, you know, a little smiley face, an exasperated frown face. At least it tells us about what the sender had in mind with certain phrases. Any rate, that might be valuable if, as a manager or as a person trying to make a pitch for an idea, is that the best tool for communicating a big idea? Probably might not be. And again, you know, you take a look at voice and you remember that it's only about 40% of our message. So between words and the voice on the telephone, have any of you ever had an argument with a significant other, perhaps, on the telephone? You know, I mean, it happens. I mean, and it happens a lot of the times because they can't see your face. And they don't know you're joking around, or they can't see the smile on your face when you're interacting with them. And you're in the car saying, oh, come on, you know, give me a break. And what it sounds like is what they hear is, you know, oh, come on, give me a break. Frown on the face, but you're just smiling, and maybe you don't mean to be demeaning or less than sympathetic. Maybe it's just because they can't see your face. And that's a big deal. So, again, it just reminds us that perhaps if it's a big ticket item, like, you know, breaking up with your girlfriend, you may want to do it face-to-face rather than, or maybe you don't want to. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you don't want to. You know, but fact of the matter is, if I'm making a pitch for a contract with somebody, or if I'm trying to pitch an idea, I think I want to do it face-to-face. I don't think I want just half my message getting over the phone lines. Something to think about. So we do find that in that setting, like we are today, you're able to gather a lot of stuff from what I'm telling you, more than just words. You know, you're seeing there's a smile on my face or there's not. You're seeing a level of comfort or not. You're seeing the way I look or not. I mean, there's part of the whole package simply because we're face-to-face. And again, for my money, if I want to pitch an idea to a boss or a subordinate, I want to do it face-to-face, and I don't want to play games with the email or the telephone because it's just not going to work out successfully at least half the time. It's just problematic. Anybody else find that? You guys know that. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but maybe breaking it down a little bit different. So, persuading others when we're face-to-face. That's kind of the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about. And so maybe we need to talk about the types of people we get involved with. And what I will tell you, I think is true, is that there are about 3 general categories of people. There's nice folks, there's difficult people, and there's kind of a backstabber, vengeful personality out there. That's 3 pretty easy-going general categories. And if you look at these 3 people up here, the problem is I don't know that you can pick them out visually. I don't know that you can. So we need a communication style that kind of works with all of them. Nice people, I don't know. Nice people, we don't need to. We don't have difficulty persuading nice people simply because they'll do what we ask. And you know, it's been my experience, even with nice people, if you as the communicator are even insulting to them, they're still nice people and they just kind of feel sorry for you and they're going to do what you want anyway. My grandmother was like that. You know, you could insult my grandmother and my grandmother would just feel sorry for you and move on. How about you guys? Like being insulted? Yeah. Interesting. There are a lot of nice people out there, but a lot of the people that we deal with are difficult people. Now, you need to ask yourself who you are. And if you kind of fit the category of when somebody tells you to do something, do you kind of want to know why? Do you ever find yourself saying, maybe the inner voice, what's in it for me? Because see, that's me. I'm a difficult person. It's been my experience that a lot of us are difficult people because we don't like to be told what to do. That offends us from the gate. And if you do tell us what to do, the inner voice, at least the inner voice, is saying, why? I mean, I'm one of those people, I just kind of want to be told why you want me to do it. You don't have to give me the entire game plan, but I want to know the why. That's big for me. I want a little bit more than just do it. Sometimes I want to know what's in it for me. Not all the time. A strategy is probably pretty cool for dealing with difficult people. Backstabbers, they're a trip. Because what I'll tell you is they generally don't stick out like a sore thumb. Some do. Some do. Typically speaking, when I run into a gentleman that's got swastikas all over his face and stuff like that, he's telegraphing to me some stuff about him. But yet, isn't that a little bit about body language anyway? So, I mean, I'm getting a little bit of information from him straight up. But most backstabbing people tend to be the kinds of folks that they blend in. What makes them dangerous is that because we don't always know who they are, if you understand that backstabbers have a big deal with the whole respect issue, man, that we need at least a communication style that tends to at least come off respectful, right? Because the last thing we want to do is turn our backs on somebody that we don't find threatening, that we're a little bit disrespectful to, only to be wearing a buck knife as a result of it. And that's happened in law enforcement for a long time. Cops just turned their back on people they didn't find threatening, only to find out that they were actually an active backstabber. In a lot of our world, I would simply tell you, I would simply ask you, how many of you have been backstabbed by a friend? They thought that you were a friend, you know, and turns out, you know, they're sleeping with your husband, or they're character assassinating you at work, or a million other things that you never saw coming. And that is a common human experience. It was something that we didn't see, and in those opportunities, you found that, well, you've been interacting with a backstabber. So my point is we need a communication method that also works well with them, because these guys are highly offended by disrespectful stuff, and they will retaliate. And so as long as we're engaging them in a way that they find respectful, that's to our advantage from a safety standpoint, if not even from a standpoint of manipulating them. Old school. I like this film for a bunch of reasons. I'll
allow you an opportunity to perform this exercise. You're not move, Mr. Perez. Get up. Get up. Square number one. I didn't tell you to move. Stir and stand at square number one. Grab me by my foot. Square number. And you grab me by my foot one more time. Get on up, Mr. Perez. I will, Perez. Get on up, Mr. Perez. I will. Get on up, Mr. Perez. I will. Get on up, Mr. Perez. I will. Get on up, Mr. Perez. Get on up. Told you what would happen. Stand on up. But I want to go ahead and call him. That's out. Have a seat on the chair. Have a seat.
Of course, the cop lost his job. We don't run around tasing people simply because they won't, do what we want them to do. But what did you hear? Do what I say, or, you're going to get it. And that is common human experience. How many of you lived in an environment with your parents where it was such that, do that, you'd better do it if, right? I mean, that's kind of what we learn. And if we didn't learn it at home, then we've learned it in grade school and on up. That is just a very common, tell you, now I'm going to threaten you. In a law enforcement environment, it's not real productive. I mean, we just go from tell to hands-on. That's just not productive at all. It doesn't look good to people. It doesn't play well to an audience very well. And there's got to be a method better than that. There's got to be a method than simply telling somebody to do something and then threatening them if they don't go along with the program. I mean, that is bare bones, unsophisticated type of salesmanship. I mean, if you're buying a new Audi and you go to an Audi dealership and the guy tells you what you're going to get and threatens you if you don't want to buy it, I mean, that's probably not a purchase that's going to go down well. And that's all our businesses is sales. Whether you're involved in law enforcement or code inspection or anything, it's all sales. It's all people skills. It's getting them to do, especially if it's a difficult person, it's getting them to do what we want them to do and maybe planting the seeds in their own head that they kind of think it's their own idea. So the verbal judo communication strategy is fairly straightforward. It's simple, and we can learn it pretty easy. It was developed by George Thompson, and the neat thing about it is that this persuasive method works with all types of people. You won't need it with nice people, because nice people will do whatever you tell them to do anyway. Difficult people, it works really well with. I'm going to show you how. And then lastly, the backstabbing personality is motivated with it well because it tends to be presented in a very respectful, non-threatening way. So take a look at it, and we'll talk about it. This 5-step Hardstyle approach is a habitual way of dealing with difficult people. Now, this could be dealing with our children. This could be dealing with elders in a nursing home environment that suffer from dementia. This could be the drunk in a bar in law enforcement, or it could be the guy when you're getting ready to do an inspection that decides, you know what, you're not doing the inspection. I know my rights. You can't come in here and look around. And they're wrong. But we need to do more than simply tell and threaten. So we're going to talk about what all these mean. But basically the 5-step Hardstyle is ask, set the context, present options, a confirmation phrase, and a 5th step of actually acting. And we can buy out at any point. Let me explain what I mean. First step in the 5-step Hardstyle is an easy one. It's so easy. How many of you, just by a show of hands, prefer to be asked to do something rather than told? I mean, that is me. I don't care what it is. I really, just don't tell me to do it. That my inner voice right away there'll be a reaction with my inner voice. I may not give it to you outside, but I don't like being told what to do. I like being asked. And we can do the ask, don't tell thing in any setting. I can sell this to correctional officers in institutional settings, and we're dealing with hardcore serious offenders. And I mean, I can sell it because there's nothing about asking that can't be followed up with, wait a second, I asked you nice, now I'm telling you, right? I mean, it can certainly go from polite asking to telling, but it's a great place to start because asking is respectful. And again, the backstabbing personality, the vengeful, retaliatory personality likes to be asked, likes to be asked. The only thing about this first step is that only a few difficult people will really cooperate at this stage. If we ask nice people to do something, we already know they're going to do it. Ask somebody to let us in, they're going to let us in. Difficult people, we may need another tool to get in rather than simply going from telling to threatening. If you don't let me in, I'm going to arrest you. It's what's called setting the context. And basically, I remember this step by breaking the word context into two words. Con in Spanish means with. Text is simply like a book, right? Step two is like grounding yourself in some book, whether it's a law book, a procedural manual, or something. But what this step does is you're grounding yourself in some law, rule, policy, or generally accepted procedure. You're grounding yourself in that and actually taking the you out of it. You're taking the personality out of it. When somebody says, nope, you're not coming in here, it's great to be able to say, well, you know, I appreciate how you don't want me in there. However, you know, there's a law in San Mateo County that lets me do that, right? I mean, you don't have to quote the law by verse. I suppose you could. In law enforcement, making a car stop on somebody and they don't want to show you your driver's license. How often do you think that happens with cops? They stop somebody who doesn't think they deserve to be stopped, and they actually flat out refuse to give the cop his driver's license. Happens. You know, so what do? Just jerk the guy out of the car and hook him up? It's not, it doesn't work real good, and it's bad PR. But, you know, it's kind of nice to go, hey, you know, appreciate you feel that way, but you know what? The law says no matter what, if you're stopped by a cop, you've got to show him your driver's license. Right? I mean, at least it takes the you out of it, and I don't have to tell them what exactly the vehicle code section is. I just tell them, hey, the law in California requires you to show your driver's license to any peace officer that stops you. And in code enforcement, I'm certain that you've got all sorts of rules and regulations that you can fall back on to remind people that it's not about you. The law says you can do this. The law requires them to submit to an inspection or whatever. The amazing thing about just telling people why, it's setting the context, telling people why, is that about 70% of difficult people will simply buy in when they know why. Isn't that weird? That's a big jump. That's a huge jump. Just by telling people why you want them to do something, they buy into it. Difficult people. Difficult people. Kind of nice in interpersonal relationships to remember that too. I mean, it works. It doesn't mean work. It means how we interact with our spouses, with our kids. So, step 3. Come on, little battery. Step 3 is this place where when we've asked them, for instance, let's talk about our kids. We've asked Johnny to clean up his room. And Johnny said, no, I want to go outside and play. And we remind Johnny that, you know, we have rules in this house, Johnny. Rules are, if you want to go outside and play, that's fine, but you clean up your room before you go outside. You see where I'm going with that? No, I don't want to. Options is a stage where after somebody, when we've told them why, options is the development of this thing of what's in it for me. And imagine persuading Johnny from the standpoint of, hey, you know what? I don't care whether you go outside or not, man. I mean, it's no big deal to me. But you're not going outside until the room's clean. Now, how about you just go in, spend about 10 minutes in there. You don't have to do a dynamic job, but spend about 10 minutes, get things squared away, then you can go outside. That way you can go out and you can play softball with Robert and Jim. You know, those kinds of manipulative things. Or in a real-world setting, it's the cop who makes the car stop, for instance, and asks to see the driver's driver license, and the guy says no. And then he reminds the driver that, well, you know what, I hate to disappoint you, but the law requires you to show me your driver's license, whether you agree with why I stopped you or not. And if you don't, you could be arrested for that. Presenting options would be like, ma'am, I haven't even made up my mind whether I'm going to issue you a citation yet or not. If you don't show me your driver's license, I'm going to have to arrest you. And if I arrest you, I'm going to tow your car. And if I tow your car, that's about $1,000 these days. Make it easy on you. I just need to see your driver's license. You see how manipulative that is? It's very manipulative, but yet I haven't reached in and grabbed somebody and started pulling them out of a car yet. I mean, think about that. And from a code enforcement standpoint, imagine how it's about persuading people from the standpoint, look, you know, I can call the cops and get the cops involved if you want. That's bad for you. That's bad for me. I don't want to have the cops come down here. And you know, if they do come, they're probably going to take you to jail or whatever. Or if I don't want to issue a citation, I can issue a citation. If you want me to issue a citation, I guess I can. But, you know, the inspection is just a process to make sure the place is safe. That's good for you. That's good for your business. You know, those kind of persuasive things. Persuasion, step 3, if you want to make a little note, with adults, it's about money. It's about money. You know, that is a key element. If you can persuade people by introducing money into the issue, it works. You know, talk about fines, talk about, you know, those kind. Money's a big manipulator. And if you notice that at this phase, 9 out of 10 people that are difficult by their nature are tending to go along with the program. Most people will buy out. By the time you get to step 3, where you're just kind of manipulating them and telling them, you know, hey, you know, essentially we're thinking the way they would think if they weren't caught up emotionally in the thing. That's all we're doing. And by giving them an option that may save them some money, they start thinking about, well, you know, okay, you know, I don't have my car towed. You know, I don't have a spare $700 to go pay, you know, the tow guy. And but there's still going to be some people that are going to tell us, perhaps not politely, that no, I'm not going to cooperate. And this confirmation phrase is kind of interesting. It is simply very, I mean, you customize it to the situation you're in, but it's basically, imagine the car stop. Imagine that we've walked through this stuff about, I've asked to see the driver's license. No. I've told them the law requires them to show me their driver's license. No, I'm not showing it to you. I've explained to them that, look, if you don't, I'm going to arrest you. And if I arrest you, I have to tow your car. That's bad for you. That's bad for me. I haven't even made up my mind whether I'm going to issue you a citation yet. Please show me your driver's license. No, I'm not going to show you your driver's license. The 4th step is this confirmation phrase. It's this thing that plays really well to an audience. It's the stuff of, is there anything I can say or do to get you to show me your driver's license? Is there anything I can say or do to let you, is there anything I can say or do to get you to let me do this inspection today? Is there anything I can say or do to convince you that, you know, I need to come in and do this inspection? Most people are probably at this point still going to tell you no. But those people, and I actually had this happen to me once. One time I got to this step with a guy, and I said, look, is there anything I can say or do to get you to go along with the program here? And he basically gave it to me. He said, just don't handcuff me in front of my kids. Something I hadn't thought of. I could do that. And didn't have to wrestle around with the guy. He gave me the answer. The one time it actually happened that way. So, I mean, but let's think about this for a second. Let's go back. If you're writing a report about an incident that goes sour, isn't it kind of cool to include these steps that you asked and the response that you got, and that you told them what the law was and the response that you got, and then the options that you discussed and the response that you got, and that finally you even asked them, is there anything I can say or do to get you to go along with the program? If you're having to write a report about that, those are really important things to put in that report to document the very steady, persuasive stuff that you've done, other than just simply tell and threaten. And think about you as an audience. Think about if this is at Starbucks and the cops have been called to Starbucks and they're dealing with somebody who's a difficult person. Think about how that sounds to you. It's the issue of you know, how did it sound when there was an asking that was going on? And about the information that was given in setting the context. And about the options that the cop was presenting this particular person in Starbucks. And then finally how you heard the cop bend over backwards and say, hey, look, is there anything I can say or do to get you to go along with the program? That's powerful. That's powerful for a jury to listen to. That's powerful for a supervisor to hear about what you did by witnesses or others. It plays well to an audience. I want you to think back to the video you saw where the cop was telling this guy to stand where he wanted him to stand, and then how it broke down to fairly, well, he actually used a taser on the guy and tased the guy. Did that leave an impression with anybody in here? You know, did that look like misconduct to you? Did that look unprofessional to you? Now imagine it a different way. Imagine if you watched the 4 steps of the 5-step Hardstyle, and imagine it not working. You get to the point, sir, is there anything I can say or do to get you to stand up here? All right, fine. And then he lays hands on the guy and forces it. Doesn't that leave a better flavor in your mouth? Because it looks like the cop bent over backwards. And let's face it, we all play to an audience. In fact, a lot of us, like that cop, are playing to an invisible audience. Everything is videotaped today. I don't care whether you're in a parking lot or a retail store or Starbucks. Everybody, there's a silent witness out there all the time. This is kind of cool because it really documents a very professional, unemotional, staged presentation to manipulate people. Final step of the 5-step Hardstyle is just to act. Because after you've got to a place where you've asked somebody, look, is there anything I can say or do to get you to go along with the program? And they say no, or some other derivative of no. About that time, for cops, we're generally going to be hands-on making an arrest or doing something like that. But in code enforcement, you may very well be leaving and documenting the incident and sending the whole thing to the DA's office for a criminal complaint. Or you may be summoning law enforcement because you need some help dealing with this particular person. Or you may just decide, you know what, I'm going to issue a citation myself. I'm sure many of you can issue citations. These are just issues where you're going to act. There's no use debating on it anymore. I mean, it's kind of cool to know when to act. And this is the way I suggest that we do it. In the workplace setting, that might be, fine, okay, fine. Is there anything I can say or do to get you to do this kind of, and nope, fine. Then you just get somebody else higher up in the food chain involved. It's acting. It works really well. The advantages of this 5-step Hardstyle are really that anybody can learn it. But do you see, though, that it's going to take actually doing it to get this habitual wax-on, wax-off thing going? Because I guarantee you, the rote mechanism of 95% of you is tell, threaten. And maybe you don't want to own that, but think about how you are with your kids, especially when you're involved in a little bit of stress with the kids. We tell them what to do, and then we threaten them. And what happens is we get involved a lot of that on the street too, in various authoritarian settings, whether it's in the workplace or on the street. When we get a little stressed, we tend to revert back to that default, which is tell, threaten. We want to avoid that. That's what the 5-step offers us. It's a really nice strategy for dealing with difficult people. Sounds good to the public, and if the incident is ever reviewed by other people, whether it was an in-house confrontation with an employee, a subordinate, or whether it is something that happened in the field with a citizen in the midst of some sort of an inspection, you can still see how you come out smelling like a rose, whether it's viewed on videotape or by witnesses that talk about what they saw you do. Very persuasive to your reputation. I don't want to leave you with the impression that you can talk people into anything, because you know that's not true. You know in your own experience that's not true. I guarantee you in law enforcement, I found that words definitely fail. There are places where right off the bat, you know that talking to these people are it's a waste of time. When somebody's got a knife and they're coming at you with a knife, talking to them is not going to work, right? And so in an enforcement setting and with code enforcement, I suppose you could show up at a gas station to do an inspection and have somebody come at you with a baseball bat. Talking to the guy is probably not going to be a great idea, right? So let's talk about what this acronym SAFER stands for, because it tells us when words just aren't going to cut it. The S in SAFER stands for security. If your security is threatened, words have failed. You don't need to get into a whole lot more. It's time to do some other stuff. In law enforcement, it might be time to act from a safety standpoint, if nothing else, to promote some distance between you and somebody. In code enforcement, it may very well be just leaving to a safe place or calling 911. Maybe it's a decision not going there in the first place unless law enforcement's along with you. Somebody that's got a reputation of being a problem in the past. But if your security is threatened, words are useless. It's time to keep yourself safe. And this is a hard thing to teach even cops, because cops get ego involved and they figure that they can stay anyway. And this is where some mistakes are made. Obviously, if you're attacked, how many of you have been punched before? Punched or slapped? Did words do anything to stop that from happening? No, words are absolutely useless when you're attacked. And I don't know how often in code enforcement we involve ourselves in attacks. I don't know. But I know in law enforcement it was common. And so the fact of the matter is, if you're attacked, words have failed, you've got to go to something else. And that might be in your place. It might be using self-defense. It might be running away. It might be contacting law enforcement. But talking to these people is useless. Talking to someone who's attacking you is useless. And that's in your own personal world as well. If you're walking down the street, if you're walking down Market Street, and you're confronted with somebody that is either threatening your security or attacking you, talking to these people is a waste of time. You've got to act to do something to keep yourself safe, right? Okay. The F in SAFER stands for fleas. Now, I don't know in code enforcement you have a whole lot of people taking off running on you. But again, in law enforcement, it's common as the day is long. You know, you pull somebody over and maybe they get out of the car and start running because they got a warrant or something. Well, the guy that's running from you that's got a $2,000 drunk driving warrant, yelling at him to stop is absolutely not going to, oh, you know what, I thought about it, I'm coming back. It's not going to happen. And so people who run from us that are fleeing, it's useless to talk to them. We can do other things. And a lot of times, it just may be documenting what happened in the form of a report and submitting it to the proper authorities like the DA's office, or it may be contacting law enforcement. I don't know in your line of work what that might be. This is one of my favorites. How many parents are in here? Okay. Have you ever been in a restaurant, let's say Lions, and there's been another family a table or two away, and you've heard this dialogue going where this, Johnny, I said sit down. Johnny, I said sit down. Johnny, doggone it, I said sit down. You want your bottom warm? Johnny, and it's like, by the time you hear this about 4 or 5 times, your inner voice is going, BM! You know, I mean, you're going crazy. And actually, who's looking like, who's the dog and who's the tail? The kid looks like they're wagging the dog, right? The parent looks powerless. What we find with excessive repetition is that it's an indicator that words have failed. And in fact, the more you repeat the same thing again and again, actually the more power you lose. You lose. Generally speaking, what I would get, barring a language barrier on the street, I'd tell people 2 times. 3's a charm. Tell you 2 times. And in your setting, I don't know what that's going to be. But I can think with children, it just, I mean, I'm sure he's a great little kid, but when I saw that picture on Google, I said, oh, that kid looks like he takes, you know, about 4 or 5 times to do something. Doesn't he? I mean, he's got a little devilish look on his face. At any rate, you know, when we get to a place where we've had to repeat ourselves a couple of times, and it's not working, words have failed. Now it's time to do something else. And in your capacity, it may very well be getting law enforcement involved, just deciding to issue a citation, or leaving, documenting the situation, sending the whole thing to the DA's office for their review. But to continue to banter with someone and say, no, you'll do it my way, and they say, no, I'm not going to, just makes you look increasingly powerless. Powerless. Words have failed. And this one probably won't happen very often. It happens occasionally in law enforcement, and that is when you're interacting with someone and something more important comes along that you got to act on. Now, I don't know if the people in the back can see the little baby that's on this little this cart, but it, I guarantee you, if I'm talking to somebody and I see some little toddler walking off into the street, or some toddler at risk, you know what? I'm done with him. I'm gonna go save the little baby. I'm gonna save the baby, save the toddler, or something else. Right? We're gonna act on something that's more important. Certainly, words have failed when you're confronted with that. You've got to act on the other, more important issue. How am I doing? Let's play a little bit with review.
Dude.
It is remembering that, communication is a package, and we can manipulate it to our benefit. It's not just what we say, it's so much of how we say it. It's so much of the how. And there are times when certain things will work better than others. There are times when an email is appropriate, but just understand that there are risks and rewards to emails. And you know this because you've received emails that have either hurt your feelings or made you angry because you didn't understand them fully. And that once you understood them fully, you could live with it. And the same thing is true with phone calls. I mean, I can't tell you how many arguments I've had with girlfriends over the years over phone calls because we really didn't understand each other. Just the way it is. Face-to-face, very effective. If you've got something important to pitch, face-to-face is the only way to do it. For instance, I think if I were going to inform someone of a pending code violation issue, I don't think I'd send them a letter. Really, I mean, I think that could potentially just set up a confrontation. For me, it's just better to make a face-to-face call, and explain what's going on and be nice and sell the thing. And, it's, even though it's all about acting. I mean, I've given people bad news for decades. And you just put the right face on for the right people, and, a lot of times you're successful with it. Just with not speaking the inner voice. The inner voice is going, oh, please. But the outside voice, the outer voice is just going, well, ma'am, you just got to look at it this way. It's just different stuff. Errors in wording leads to loss of credibility. So even though words are a tiny part of communication, remember that they're very important. I mean, you can imagine that the pharmacist that decides that taking one a day is correct, but actually the dosage is different than that, that pharmacist has lost a lot of credibility with you, right? Or you see that that you've been actually given the wrong medication. Simple word. Lost a lot of credibility. 5-step Hardstyle. In one page, it just kind of sets up the issue of we ask people instead of telling them. Very powerful. It just, telling just sets up a confrontation that's unnecessary, especially because you can't tell who are difficult just by looking at them most of the time. If we set the context by grounding ourselves in a law, a policy, or some generally accepted procedure, it takes the personality out of it. suddenly you're not the moving issue. It's the fact that whether you agree with it or not as code enforcement, this is what the law is. This is what our policy is. This is what we do. And it tends to deflect criticism, and it tends to enhance cooperation. Presenting options is just playing on the basic need of whatever they got to win or lose. And a lot of times I find money is a huge manipulator. Money is a huge manipulator. And then again, if they, by step 3, if they're not going along with the program, by asking them if there's anything you can say or do to get them to go along with the program, if they say no after that, you have utterly exhausted everything that could be expected of you, and you've come out smelling like a rose. And if you've got a lot of witnesses hanging around that are watching your behavior, or if you're being videotaped, it really helps you later on when the thing is reviewed. Because I offer you that there's an awful lot of videotaping going on out there that we're just unaware of. And so the final stage is just acting and recognizing that that's the appropriate time to act after we've gone through these 4 stages. That's the appropriate time, rather than the guy in the video that simply told the guy what to do and then tased him when he wanted him to do it and threatened him. So didn't work out real well. These are when words fail. It's nice to know that. We talked about the fact that we need to know when words have failed, so we need to know when to leave. And these are 2 big ones. These are 2 big ones, and this is a real common one as well. Fleeing and revised priorities are probably not going to become an issue for you. They are more of an issue with law enforcement. But excessive repetition is a big one, and man, you'll see it, and you'll see it from now on. You'll see it a lot. You'll be in a restaurant sometime in the next month, and you're going to see it. And obviously, if you begin to feel like your security is threatened, it's a good thing to be able to say to yourself, you know what, I think it's time for me to leave. I remember that. Not trying to, tombstone courage has gotten a lot of people hurt. So I don't recommend it.
And action.
That's all, folks.
Cut. Porky.
Questions, ideas, comments, suggestions. Ma'am.
I once had an employee complain that another employee had yelled at her, and it didn't sound like the employee. And then she showed me an email that was all in capital letters. And the person who had sent the email didn't know how to shut off her caps lock. But I mean, if they hadn't come to me, it was causing real tension in the workplace. Something as
Isn't that
simple.
fabulous? That's interesting. Who else? Ideas, comments, questions, suggestions? Now that you've seen this, now you're all shutting down, huh? Nah, come on, don't be babies. We won't even use it. Sir.
What do you do about the outright liar? The person that you go through those steps, something simple as that, and just continue to tell you some other answer other than no, but you know that is not the answer.
Well, this is not a tool for interviewing people or like some in law enforcement like to use the interrogation. It's not about that. This is about manipulating people to get them to do what you want them to do. Now, for instance, if you're trying to set up the stage for some kind of a statement, it's about trying to manipulate them into voluntarily giving you that statement. This isn't the kind of thing that we're going to use to try and get the truth out of somebody. It's not designed to manipulate people into being truthful. In fact, from a law enforcement standpoint, I'll take dishonesty any day. Because actually, if you can prove dishonesty, I mean, and oftentimes you can, that's worth $1 million in law enforcement circles. If somebody says they weren't in the car when the guy got ran over, and there's some ATM camera that shows them behind the wheel during the crash running over the guy, I'll take that no. I wasn't there. I wasn't driving the car. Somebody stole it. And, we got them on video running the red light and causing the accident. So I'll take a lot. But this isn't about trying to persuade people to tell you the truth. People are self-serving, A lot of times they're not motivated to tell you the truth until they see what? It might cost them some money. And we're back to money again. Yes, sir.
Does this apply to different cultures? Because different cultures converse in a different way than we do, and we may not always understand what they're saying.
The beauty about the 5-step Hardstyle is it will work with well over 100 different cultures. We think that there's like 105 different cultures planet-wide. And we haven't found a culture it doesn't work with. Because one thing that is common to all cultures is disrespect. And disrespect will lead to a retaliatory response. That's common with all cultures. And one of the nice things about the 5-step hardstyle with difficult people is it is respectful. And you're walking people through in a strategic way of trying to get them to think better for themselves. You know, because let's face it, most of us, we don't want to put hands on people. We don't want to do negative things like write people tickets or arrest people or cause bad things to happen. But some people just don't want to go along with the program. Their first blush is no. And that's okay, because I'm that way. But if I've got somebody that's taken the time to be patient with me and tell me, wait a second, I know you don't want to pay your taxes, but you know what? The law in this country says you got to pay taxes. If you don't pay your taxes, you know what? You're going to go to jail. And I don't know if you know it, but there's bad things that happen in jail to guys like you. And suddenly I'm motivated. You know, so I mean, it's just, but I need somebody to think for me sometimes when I'm getting emotional. Because I don't know about you, when I start to get emotional, my brain shuts off. Have you ever noticed that? And so when you're dealing with somebody who's gone emotional, recognize their brain's shut off, so you're having this strategy works because you're staggering it down from ask, set the context, appeal to some kind of an option that will work for them, and then finally this thing about, is there anything I can say or do to get you to do it? You know, I mean, that's very powerful. Yes, sir.
Since I was told by owner of a hazardous waste facility, I don't have time to do the inspection, he said, and so after the third time, I said, well, I guess we need to get an inspection warrant again. Is there any right to come in and do the inspection? I mean, provide options.
Well, and you could imagine by someone who you're confronted with that doesn't have the time, doesn't want to be bothered by it, to be able to say, well, you know, I understand that, and I think if I were in your shoes, you know, I probably wouldn't, you know, have a lot of spare time myself or even want it. But here's the deal. It's the law in San Mateo County. We're required by law to do it. Whether I want to be here or not, I'm required by law to conduct this inspection. And, well, no, I'm still not letting you in. And then it's the old, well, here's the deal. If I don't do the inspection, you know, these are going to be the monetary results that'll happen. And we're talking fines, we're talking other, you know, you can find some kind of manipulative thing that works. And then if it doesn't, you still got, sir, is there anything I can say or do to get you to permit me to do this inspection today? If they still say no, it's fine. Well, okay, bye. You know, and you write a report about it, send it to the DA's office, or you get law enforcement involved, or you issue them a citation, whatever. Sir.
One thing I learned a long time ago is that I would never tell somebody, I would always ask them what they feel, and I can appreciate how you're feeling. But if you say you understand, that can turn the person off on you.
Yeah. Point taken. Point taken. You're right. Because frequently we haven't been in their shoes, we don't know what they're feeling, and we don't understand. And yeah, point well taken. You're right. Sir.
Words are 10% of our communication, and body language is 50%. Do you have suggestions for an inspector who wants to be burned, yet he wants compliance out of the person who's inspecting? What sort of body language do you find that works for getting that message across?
Well, let's think about it. One thing that we can recognize with body language is dress. True? I think we find that people in general are more impressed with uniforms and suit and ties. We tend to respond to authority figures in suit and tie or uniforms more than we do in casual dress. So one thing that we could do to enhance body language, those things that tend to affect most humans, is if you think you might have a confrontation, you want to dress very professionally. Now that might be, if you're working for the fire department, that might be showing up in uniform, or that might be dressing in a suit and tie or a sport coat and tie, looking very professional. Because, as I showed you with that one picture that we were looking at involving the cop that was well overweight, and just, he looked just evil. It's not the kind of thing that sells well. Sometimes the way we stand. Sometimes, I don't know if you've noticed, but I have a very comfortable stance. It's just this. You know, it's kind of a bladed position. I have my hands in front of me. I can't break this. and I learned it in law enforcement. It's kind of if you kind of look at it, it's kind of like, I'm a ready stance, you know. But really, it's just, but they're standing this way, dealing with somebody from a distance, from an appropriate distance, it actually looks like guy can handle himself. I don't look vulnerable. How does this look? You know what I mean? So the physical stuff can be all about appearance and eye contact. Imagine that some of us, if we're just eyeballing somebody, some people find that offensive. You have to pick that up. Those are where some cultural differences apply. There are some cultures that don't want to make eye contact with authority figures at all, and it's understanding that. Or some cultures, it's understanding that they like to get really close to you, and some cultures don't. So sometimes it's proxemics. The physical part is deciding how close we want to get, you know, whether we're making eye contact with them. Those are some suggestions as well. Typically, the closer we stand to somebody, the more we're invading their space, the more uncomfortable that makes them, and generally they like it when you back up. And so, I mean, if they can just say, well, yeah, okay, you can do it because you've invaded their space, it's an easy way out. You know what I'm talking about? Or, you know, there's also the negative side of that. As we invade people's space, we're becoming vulnerable too. So it depends on the context of the situation. Yes, sir.
You were modeling the kind of the top bad cop relationship when you were being congenial and informal to gain their cooperation, but at times it would be then revert formality to the threat.
You know what? I don't like the whole threatening thing. What I like to do is just tell people what is. And the stages are that, you know, whether you agree with it or not, this is what's going to happen. And it's the kind of stuff of asking that works real well. Setting the context is, you know what, I can't help what I have to do. I mean, this is my job. I'm here to do the inspection. I got nothing, I mean, nothing personal, man, but I'm here to do this job, and the law requires that I do it. And if you don't let me, I mean, you're actually becoming a law violator. I mean, that's not threatening people. That's in an unemotional way telling them kind of what is. And then if we go to the next step, if they say, well, I don't care, you know, take me to jail then. Step 3 might be the thing of, look, I don't think you want to go to jail over this thing. And it's being nice. It's BSing people. It's like, don't make a big deal out of this. All I need to do is walk around and make sure that, you know, whatever you need to make sure about. And then the introduction of what I like is money. The introduction of, look, you know, and if you don't let me do this, this is going to happen. And oftentimes it's going to involve citations or arrests or money issues. And that's what you need to exploit, is that, you know, this is going to cost you a lot of money. I mean, I don't know about you, but the first time you even call up an attorney, that's going to cost you about $4,000. Do you have an extra $4,000 hanging around just to retain an attorney to fight this thing? When we could just do the inspection today and it's over with. You know what I mean? Right now they say for drunk driving, it's for something involving drunk driving, the lawyer fees are in excess of $15,000 now. So, I mean, that's a real manipulative thing. You know, you've got somebody that is talking about getting their attorney involved to remind them that, you know what, unless this guy happens to be your son or your stepdad or whatever, it's going to cost you a lot of money to get that attorney involved. Are you sure you want to go that route? I mean, why don't we just do it the easy way? Again, it's back to money. Yes, sir.
How do you handle when sometimes you have to do interagency inspection? And I've had 3 times where I've gone there first and found that they come down.
Did somebody tase the guy?
Calm the proprietor down, and then the other agency will come in there and incite the guy.
It happens all the time. I mean, the sad part about it is that we deal with people all the time as coworkers that are not the most sophisticated people in the world. And what at least you learn in law enforcement real quick is when somebody is assigned to back you up on a call and you know who it is, a lot of times you're just better off saying, hey, you know what, I'll handle this by myself, and not letting them show up so you can just deal with it yourself, because you feel actually safer handling it by yourself than having this guy that likes to fight fire with gasoline. You know, and so sometimes it's about preemptively knowing who's going to show up and selecting the best people that are suited for it. That might be something that I would recommend. Again, what I have found is you want people who are really good at BSing folks. You know what I mean? I mean, the best communicators are the best BS artists. They're the people that could sell somebody who already has a brand new car. They're the people that could talk them into buying another new car. You know, that old expression, you could sell ice to Eskimos. Those people, they are masters of those persuasive skills of not getting emotionally sucked in. And when we start threatening them people, we've gotten emotionally sucked in. That's one thing that's true. When we have to resort to threatening, we've been emotionally sucked in.
But if they have to be there and they start doing the wrong kind of threatening behavior, is it better to step in and try and deal with that?
Yeah, something that I might do is lie to them. For instance, if this gentleman was causing a problem, I might simply say, hey, listen, I know her. Hang on. And I might not know her at all, but it's what's called cutting and herding. I kind of cut him off, herd him away, lie to him saying, hey, I know her. Let me handle this. Because most people, if you tell them, hey, I know this person. Let me handle it. They'll let you. They'll let you. And so we've lied to this guy. We've got him off the side. We've cut and herd him, and now I'm over dealing with it, and got the potential confrontational specialist out of the way. Ma'am.
Do you have any suggestions for female inspectors looking to have the difficult situation on female inspectors?
Women are great. Women are naturally, I don't mean this disrespectfully, women are naturally good at manipulating. No. I mean, and I think it comes, I don't mean that. What I have found is that women, because they're very nurturing, tend to be pretty manipulative, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Men tend to, at their default nature, they tend to be confrontational. We tend to be more aggressive. So I think actually recognize that women have an advantage. I found that in law enforcement. Some of the best cops I ever worked around were women, because they could put on the right face. They knew how to put the right face on for the right person and manipulate their way through it. And so I would simply say that for women, one thing you want to particularly pay attention to is appearance. You want to look professional. You want to look really good. You want to look aces. And then it's also how you stand and voice projection. It's going to be eye contact. It's those kinds of things. If you're standing kind of unsure of yourself and not making any eye contact and saying, oh, this is bad if you don't let me do this. That's not as persuasive as, sorry, I want you to rethink this. And very professional, calmly talk about, this is what the law says, this is what you got to do, and if you don't do it, you're liable to be arrested, cited, and then moving into the dollar stuff of options to persuade them if they don't go along with just setting the context and the stuff. And that's very professional, and that actually takes people by surprise. It's disarming. When you start rapid fire feeding them stuff that tends to be persuasive to the extent that you're thinking for them better than they're capable of thinking for themselves, and you're scoring points. Whether they're saying it out loud or not, inside they're going, yeah, that's true. You're scoring points. With women, it's a big deal to really, I think looks are a big deal, and it's how you stand, and it's eye contact. I think that's part of it. Those are some suggestions I play with. Yes, sir.
We all have our own buttons that get pushed at all times.
Yeah.
When you're going through these set of 5 action items, basically, and you find yourself going awry, things maybe start out well, someone says something that somehow gets your heat going, how do you pull yourself back? How do you find your path again so you don't get spiraled up into their emotional state?
Well, let me give you 2 stages. First is you don't want to get there in the first place. Sometimes deflectors work really well with that. In the schoolyard setting, what I have found is when somebody insults us, what do? we insult them right back. I mean, it's the tit for tat kind of thing. Somebody shoves us, we shove them back. Somebody insults us, we, says something about our mother. What do? We tell something about their mother. It's far easier to simply come up with a new default mechanism rather than the default insult back. Because what I've seen on the street is I've seen people, they're confronted with the age-old FU thing, and I've heard other cops get sucked into the old, F you too. And now, what have you done? You got this cop using profanity to somebody, and I mean, he's lost everything because of a knee-jerk response. Better to have something, a deflector like, hey, I appreciate that, but, and we're back into, it's just a deflector. It's like, telling me something about my mom and how birth was given to me. I could easily go to, yeah, I appreciate that, but, the issue is, I've got, and we're right back on tack. So deflectors are very handy, and whatever your buttons are, you need to work them through and come up with the stuff that are great knee-jerk deflectors, because we all have our buttons. And never act on the inner voice. Never say what's going on with the inner voice. Inner voice can be fine. And you know what? When you're driving away from the guy and he can't see you anymore, if now you want to go crazy and say all those things and, I mean, we do that, fine, do it then. But, if we're always acting like we're being videotaped, that's a nice, cool thing. I mean, if you're just acting like I'm being videotaped, you're likely not to get sucked into that.
I don't think that's really the situation. It's like people have to file paperwork or plans, and if they're not filing them and you've asked them nicely, less nicely, the stronger you.
Yeah, but there's always the risk-reward thing, right? I mean, if we're asking and they say they're going to do it, we could always remind them that, hey, you know what, if you don't file those plans and you continue with construction, at some point we're going to red tag this thing and shut it down, and that's bad for you. I mean, winter's coming. You don't even have a roof on it yet, and it's about money one more time. So, thanks, folks, very much.